Hello, and welcome to another episode of Decentral Lounge brought to you by GlobalStake, your institutional, truly decentralized bare metal staking service provider. Today, we're excited to have a wonderful guest on the show, Matthew Snider, who is the president and investment advisor at Block3 Strategy Group. So we're thrilled to welcome Matthew, the president and co-founder of Block3 Strategy Group, a firm dedicated to helping businesses, brands, and entrepreneurs harness blockchain technologies for new income streams. As a registered investment advisor representative, a recognized voice in the Web3 space, and the author of Warren Buffett in a Web3 World, Matthew brings a wealth of knowledge from his extensive experience in financial and liquidity, risk management, and marketing data analytics. His proactive involvement in cryptocurrency projects since 2016 positions him at the forefront of blockchain innovation. A graduate of Loyola Marymount University with an MBA and a BA in economics from Boston University, Matthew's insights blend academic rigor with practical cutting-edge blockchain applications. Matthew, we're so excited to have you and join us today on the show. So welcome. And why don't we just jump right in and tell us a little bit about how you got involved in blockchain and Web3, going back to the beginning.
Awesome. Well, thanks again so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and great to just connect with more folks in the space, trying to help educate the community and make sure people are growing wealth sustainably for the long term in this Web3 space. So again, my name is Matthew Snider. I'm a registered investment advisor with Block3 Strategy Group, which actually was born out of a company called NFT Consulting, which I created in 2021, where, in that midst of a market, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. I come from a management consultant background. I worked for KPMG, Slalom. I worked at Nike for a number of years, PayPal, a number of large banks. From a management consulting perspective, I thought, well, how hard could it be? I'll start a consulting agency about NFTs. And my phone just wouldn't stop ringing. People kept calling me. I got content. I want to turn into an NFT. I got a restaurant. I got, a museum. What can I do? And I thought, man, this is really, really cool. And so I was able to, I've been in the space as an investor and just an interested party since about 2015, 2016. I wrote a business school law paper on Bitcoin, which was in 2015, which is always very interesting to go back and read. Just doing a little bit of dabbling here and there in both the traditional markets and the Web3 ecosystem back in 2016, 2017. And that's kind of where I started reading a lot more about Warren Buffett and security analysis and trying to understand value investments and understand that that's really a thing of the past. And we needed to think of new ways that we could start investing and try to think of new technologies and mechanisms that would allow us to do that. And so I really got into the cryptocurrency rabbit hole and started to make my investments here and there and see how things play out in the ICO boom and see how things sort of totally deflated for a couple of years. And then of course, as the COVID pandemic happened, we saw that big uptick in 2020, 2021. And so it's really cool to be seeing all these from a market cycle and just hearing people kind of now say oh, well, we know where we are here in this cycle. Here's where we're going to be, and just being able to see that from a time in the market perspective. So it's been really, really amazing. We parlayed NFT consulting into a larger group called Block3 Strategy, which is supposed to be blockchain, Web3, and everything in between. So we wanted to widen that aperture a little bit. And then I found out that as more and more people got into this and the space got more popular, everybody wanted to be a consultant. So I was like, well, what can I do to differentiate myself? I love money. I love investing. And I noticed that there's just a ton of misinformation out there, a ton of it's a very immature market in a sense. And so we wanted to be able to provide credentialed, professional, fiduciary investment advice and financial advice in a space where people really can't do that. And in passing the Series 65, I was able to get registered with the SEC, with FINRA, with the state of North Carolina, where I'm based. And then to pair that, we created Warren Buffett in a Web3 World, which is a book that I took about 1,300 pages of all of Warren Buffett's shareholder letters and condensed them into an easy to read and snackable investment guide for investors in the Web3 space. And so it's not meant to be overly technical. It's not meant to be very detailed or very difficult to read. And it's just meant for the everyday person to have the ability to open a book and say, here's a nugget of wisdom for today. One of my very favorites that is apt for this market right now is inactivity strikes us as intelligent behavior. one of the things that Warren Buffett always said, doing nothing is honestly sometimes the best thing. And when you see a very fervent and hyperactive market, it's just one of those things that people can keep in their mind as they hold their tokens and make their investments, that the best investor in the world who held on to a consistent 20% annual return compounded for 65 years, generating 3.6 million% return for his shareholders if he held since 1965, he did pretty good. So even though he hates crypto, his investment prowess and wisdom is still applicable. So that's how we got to where we are today.
That's a really great story. And one of the things I was actually going to chime in on was the whole, Bitcoin being rat poison squared. I mean, how do you actually take something like Warren Buffett's wisdom and then kind of make that work for Web3? I'm sure, without giving away too much of the book, and you already shared some of it, was it strange to write through that process, knowing that he doesn't care for crypto, and then to take his wisdom from his Berkshire letters, which are very, very famous in and of themselves, and then translate that wisdom to that Web3 sort of world? What was that like, that whole process of writing?
It was really a lot of fun. I don't think I've ever had more fun writing a project. I thought, well, I wanted to start a blog, or I wanted to get more into content creation. And so many people start here and there, once a week, once a month. And I thought, you know what? Let's do something that's just landmark, that I could go pass around to people and sort of plant my flag in the space. And we actually ended up writing, there's about 60 of these tidbits. So we took a piece of his information, like a piece of his wisdom, and then we wrote about it as it pertains to the Web3 world. So we kind of took the context away from what he was actually talking about and saying, this rule applies in this space. And we had about 120, I think, that we had written, and realized that many of these were either redundant, or it didn't really speak to Web3, or it didn't really have the right hook. So we really pared it down. And my co-author, Stephen Teplitz, who's a business partner of mine, we worked really hard to make sure that every one of these was applicable and would really be a nugget of information for people interested in investing in the space.
Quick question then. So following up after the book, your transition from management consultancy into like active participation in early cryptocurrency projects, especially when you were doing the research for this book tailored for crypto education, how has all of this kind of shaped your views on blockchain's potential for the future, both for the TradFi world, but also for the Degens that are just obsessed with everything that DeFi is doing right now?
For so long, I thought I was on the fringe. As a management consultant at Slalom, they purported to be a technology company. They are, but in 2017, 2018, I was the blockchain guy who kept saying, like, maybe you should look at this and stop worrying about cloud computing services and create blockchain as a service. And they're like, okay, go write us a go-to-market strategy. Let's go figure that out. So I always felt like I was on the fringe. And now we're seeing much more of a maturation of the market. These ETFs that are coming in, you've got institutions that are putting in money here, you got endowments. Now, all of a sudden, I'm kind of in this great position of being in the middle of this Venn diagram between both Web 2 and Web 3, or as Ryan said, like 2.5. Right. And that's like the biggest opportunity for me, because I don't go advise people on grabbing a bunch of meme coins and degenning into some of these aspects, even though that is its own rabbit hole. There's so much you can go into down there, but really focusing more on like, okay, how do we educate people, other investment advisors, other institutions, about what Bitcoin is, about what Ethereum is, now that these are becoming more like family names, I guess, household names. You're not really yelled at anymore at Thanksgiving if you bring this stuff up at the table. You're like, oh, okay, I got people asking about that. In 2017, my mom said it's a Ponzi scheme. I'm like, okay, great, Mom, that's fantastic. And now she's asking me to help create a Bitcoin wallet. So it's been really cool to see this transition, but I still feel very much less on the fringe than I did a couple of years ago, and much more focused sort of in the middle of how we bring more people into this space, not only for our own bags, not only because we need more people in this space, but because it's really, really interesting and it's not going away.
I have a question about generations. So being an RIA in this space right now, it's a pivotal point in time. So I'm kind of curious, as we have talked with different RIAs on the show in the past, I want to know your perspective on like the generational situation. What I mean by that is some RIAs are telling us it's, Gen Z, millennials that are basically coming in and saying, hey, help me, I want to do this. I see this as the future. And then anecdotally, you have some of the older generation that are saying, this is rat poison. What are you doing? Like, I don't want to give my money to my kids if they're going to gamble it away. In your experience, is that true? If it is, how are you navigating that? Or if that's not true in your experience, what's the difference here in regards to like educating people and getting people into the space?
So in January, and this was like great timing because Bitcoin was still around maybe the 30s ish, but in January, like right in the new year, I booked out a Friday and I went to 25 different registered investment advisors and wealth managers in the Raleigh-Durham area. And I went and physically knocked on their door, brought a couple books with me, knocked on their door, and I said, do you all have a crypto strategy or, people asking you about digital investments? Out of those 25, one person sat down with me. The very first person actually sat down with me and said, this is really interesting. We haven't really had people ask about this, but I know about it. I know that it's really important and we're really interested in trying to work with you moving forward. 24 other people basically slammed the door in my face and said, it's a scam, no store of value. Nobody asks us about this. And I really want to go back there now because 3 months later, a lot has shifted. And I'd be curious to see if that's still the case. We also tried to create, we created, I think last year, a couple classes called Blockchain Made Easy. We tried to help people understand NFTs. We tried to help people understand business advisory, how your business can use NFTs and cryptocurrencies to help enhance your bottom line or create new channels of revenue or new user experiences. So it's really been a process, like you said, of both education and trying to get a sense from people who manage a lot of money. Although I would say in the South, and those people that I spoke to from a wealth management perspective, typically more conservative with money and typically deal with older clients. But I did just send out a proposal yesterday to a 61-year-old who has almost $1 million in crypto and wants to know how to best allocate. Like, did they do the right portfolio allocation? Could they rebalance? Are there things that they could be doing differently? So it is pretty astonishing to see somebody at 61 come to me with that amount of exposure. And I'm like, yeah, let's rock and roll. Like, here's how we can help. And here's how you can think of this in a different way.
That's great that you would have a true quote unquote boomer come up with $1 million portfolio, right? And I just think that that's so interesting. I was waiting for a flight the other day and I overheard some older people, probably in their late 60s. And the mom was basically saying, my son keeps telling me to buy Bitcoin, but I don't want to touch that. I don't want anything to do with it. And so there's still sort of this reluctance. And I think that was a great question on Jordan's part, just asking about that generational gap. So, in your Block3 strategy company, like you as a personal IRA, like what is it like your day to day? Do you actually have clients that come to see you and you help them, decide how to allocate their portfolio? Is it some people want more hands-on and some people want more hands-off? Like, what does it look like at Block3 strategy just on your average day?
So we're dealing with a lot of retail clients right now, trying to get we're trying to bring them in the door from a client perspective in terms of how they should start to allocate. I think one of the big services that we're trying to offer now is portfolio evaluation. How do we take a look at things you already have? How can we help make that more efficient? One person came to me and said, I got 50% of this in like XRP, for example. And that's fine, like no problem with XRP, but the juxtaposition of that against a Bitcoin chart can show you, hey, you would have had a lot more money had you just kind of maybe allocated this a different way. And so helping people kind of understand a lot of these different tokens, what is it, 23,000 different tokens out there now, and new ones getting created every day. And somebody came to me the other day and said, I just made $50,000 on Toncoin. And I was like, great, let's have a chat about it. And they're like, but I can't get out because there's no liquidity. And I was like, what do you mean? And Coinbase, as stupid as they are, listed two of them. There's 2 Toncoins on Coinbase, one of which is the top 13th traded crypto, and the other for like Telegram, and the other one is just some like no coin. And this person like had to get out of their position and like realize that they're not in the actual token that they're supposed to be in. So like this stuff happens all the time. And so working with retail investors in that perspective is probably the first thing that we do. We're also working with a couple larger clients on building out funds that are specifically devised for particular strategies: crypto income, blended Bitcoin, cash funds, risk-adjusted funds, DeFi funds. Like, how do we create the right token structure so people can have like a plug-and-play strategy for registered investment advisors or institutional wealth managers as well? And then the third piece of what we do at Block3 is actually creating a new project that's going to launch in May called the Hive Investment Society. And this is going to be limited to 50 people. but we are creating a collective investment community, and we're putting up $25,000, and we're going to let other people trade with our money. And if you propose a trade and it's a profitable trade, you as a proposer are going to get 15% of the gains. And if you vote for that proposal, you're going to get a 3% pro rata share of the gains from that particular trade. Each one's fixed at $500. And every week we're going to post the top 3 best trades, and we're just going to see what happens. So like, I love running experiments like that. We're going to have a really good time.
That's very cool. Very cool. Fascinating. I'm actually curious, as well, as you guys are talking to multiple clients, both fellow RIAs or even end clients themselves, the ones that kind of tier up towards more of that private client stature that need to use an actual custodian. Curious your perspective on the current, not necessarily regulatory aspect from like the legal side, but more of just like, which custodians do you all feel comfortable working with? Or if you don't feel comfortable answering that question, which ones do you feel are providing a lot of value to other RIAs that you kind of want to highlight or call out?
The ones that I've had the most experience using also as a personal account is Fidelity. They have a really interesting just set of options available for people. They've got their own digital asset team that it's been really cool to see them build out. They've been one of the pioneers in this space for a number of years, very under the radar. They're not the Grayscales, they're not the Bitwise. And so custody is a really interesting issue. We at the moment don't hold assets under management for investors. And we do that, I kind of had the same problem with the NFT thing. I wanted to do the teach for you model, but people were saying, can you do it for me? And I'm like, I don't want your seed phrase. I don't want to touch any of this stuff. I don't want to be responsible for any of it. So it became a much easier way for us to engage clients to say, look, you've got custody. We can help you understand the ledger. We can help you get cold storage. We can help you get into Coinbase, whatever the case is. But really it becomes a question of teaching them how to do it themselves, which is also part of the education and the overall adoption, is that we want to teach people to be able to do this. And now I don't think over time, custody is going to be very ubiquitous, and it's going to be very easy, and the user experience is going to be much, much better. But right now, we still have this kind of clunky back and forth, like, a transaction here, a transaction there, what wallet, and these kinds of things. So for now, we really want to be helpful in just helping them sort of that teach to fish model, making sure that they feel comfortable doing those things. And I think that that's been a really big benefit, because many places don't have the time or patience to kind of give that personal tailored experience.
Well, thank you so much for the insight for how you operate day to day. I mean, thinking about, and you kind of alluded to some of the things that are going to happen in the future, whether it's sort of that abstraction to where people don't really have to worry about maintaining that financial sovereignty and their private keys and so on and so forth. I mean, where do you see this all going? Like, what are some future trends that you're looking at, some narratives that you think, whether that's in the short term, medium term, long term, just kind of thinking about the future and how this space continues to evolve?
I definitely think seeing the news about BlackRock tokenizing their fund on Ethereum was pretty groundbreaking, more so than people really recognize. I'm fortunate enough to have a well-known investor from a Bitcoin perspective, Mark Yusko in Durham, here in Chapel Hill, and he has always been on the roadshow talking about everything's going to be tokenized. Every single thing that you can think about is going to be tokenized. I think that narrative and understanding for people who are interested in the space, what that actually means and what the process is for tokenizing something. It's even a word I don't like to say, because if you talk about crypto, automatically people are like trying not to pay attention to you. So if you say the word tokenize, people are really freaking out. So what we also try to do in that sense, like I'm working with a faith-based institution right now to figure out how to make a property a little bit more liquid, where they have this 50 acres and they can't really sell it and they don't really want to keep it. But I'm like, you can carve out 25% of this if you want, and we can figure out a way to tokenize this deed, and we can figure out a way to bring other investors in and partner with you on this so that you can give out some of this equity in a way that doesn't make it a security, that makes it possible for you to actually make this happen. So I think definitely tokenization is going to be one, and we're starting to see a lot more use cases now with decentralized physical infrastructure. I'm loaning out my Wi-Fi right now. I'm walking around with Silencio doing noise pollution measurements and all that kind of stuff. Like I call it the micro gig economy, right? So I'm not driving a Tesla, or I'm not driving Uber, but I'm out there using my phone microphone or using my computer bandwidth to help earn money. And I think that that's going to be a really, really big, powerful narrative moving forward.
Completely agree. I thought it was fascinating that when BlackRock announced that, the market didn't move. ETH did not skyrocket. So definitely a lot of people, I agree with you, that tokenization it's like an eyes glossed moment. They don't really know what that means, what's going on. Yeah. Exciting to see what happens.
I think too, as much, and you all know this as well as I do, but being in the rabbit hole, you kind of look up and you're like, who doesn't know what Ethereum is? And yet all of a sudden you're talking to these investors or these other wealth managers, and they're like, I know Bitcoin's garbage, but I don't know what this other magic money you're talking about is. And so even it's the number 2 on the list. You'd think that more people would at least kind of understand that there's a couple other ones out there that are pretty good. And one of the other things too that I think is really powerful is tokenization of treasuries. And I can go get better, higher yield from a digitized treasury note than I can at the 4.25% that I can go get now. So that kind of, maybe there's an arbitrage opportunity there, and it might not last forever, but Ethereum is not nearly as big as we think it is, and Bitcoin right now is just starting to break through.
Well, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us today, Matthew. Tell the listeners or viewers, how can, first and foremost, where can they buy your book? Because obviously we'll include a link with that as well. But how can people contact you, reach out to you, learn about, Block3 Strategy Group, and maybe reach out to you as a potential client even?
Sure. So you can find the book on Amazon. It's called Warren Buffett in a Web3 World. And it's got this kind of cover, so you'll know that it's mine. And you can find me on Twitter is probably the best place, at Block3 Strategy. You can always hit me in an email, matthew@block3strategy.io. And it would always be great to connect with folks, even if you're curious about things, or if you're at a conference and you see that, maybe we're speaking or that we've got a panel going on or something. Always just awesome to meet new people, and look forward to helping anybody sort of get onboarded or help in that sense.
Well, thank you everyone who's tuning in to watch this episode of Decentral Lounge. I'm sure we'll be back with another fantastic guest. Thank you again, Matthew, for being here, and we look forward to you tuning in next time. Take care.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks, Matthew.